Hi, this is Onna, and this is Check It at the Round Table, where we discuss movies, books, music, and stuff. Today, we are discussing Semantic Error the Movie. I have been wanting to watch this for a long time, but my schedule has been kind of insane, and so I have not gotten it done. But last weekend, I had my midterm exams, and because I procrastinate like to the nth degree, I decided it was a great weekend to watch this movie. Now, I did pass on my midterm exam, so I'm like, that is good. But I also got this movie watched. So anyway, this movie is the story of Cho Sang-woo and Jang Jae-young. Cho Sang-woo is a by-the-letter student. Everything fits into a little box. His life is extremely organized. He does everything to the letter. But he gets fed up with the fact that he has like 3 to 5 freeloaders who are seniors who have decided they're not going to help him with a project. And so he's the one who's having to literally do the work of 4 to 5 people. And he's like, this is unfair. This is not right. And so he actually makes this really pathetic PowerPoint. He's not good at PowerPoints, which becomes quite funny at the end of this movie. But anyway, he makes a PowerPoint that says, I do not think that just because people are seniors, they should not have to do work and leave it all to the juniors to do. And his professor's like, yes, you are right. This is wrong. So Jae Young, who is freeloader number 3, gets notice that he is not going to graduate from his school because he did not work on this class and got a fail. And so he gets mad at Cho Sang-woo. Now, I really don't know why he gets mad at Cho Sang-woo because, quite honestly, this was Jae Young's fault, not Cho Sang-woo. Cho Sang-woo just said, I'm not doing this work. But anyway, Jae Young decides that he is going to track down Sang-woo and make him pay for being the one who is responsible for him not graduating. Again, maybe it's because I'm too analytical, but I still sit there and go, this is not a Sang-woo problem. This is a Jae Young problem. Own it, deal with it, do another semester and graduate. But anyway, he wants to instead spend his time blaming someone else. So he eventually tracks down Sang-woo because Sang-woo is looking for a game designer for this game that he wants to do as a project. And he really likes this kind of model that was created for an art exhibit of this kid on a skateboard flying through the air. And it's kind of interesting because the first encounter of Sang-woo and Jae Young is at the art exhibit where Cho Sang-woo comes in, he's looking at the art of this skateboarder that's animated falling through the air, and Jae Young is there in his skateboard garb with this kind of, I don't know, mouth piercing that he thinks is very attractive, and he's just standing there like, oh, you want to get a picture of me with this art? Because he thinks that Sang-woo is looking at him going, wow, I'm impressed by you. And Sang-woo just quietly takes a picture of the name on the art and leaves. And Jae Young is like, he didn't want his picture with me. I am upset by this. So anyway, that's their first encounter. And their second encounter, Sang-woo meets him and Jae Young tries to intimidate him by making it so he can't leave. He puts his foot out and kind of threatens him. And Sang-woo, I do have to say that I really like Sang-woo's character. Now, some people will find Sang-woo's character intensely annoying, and there are parts of Sang-woo that are extremely annoying. But I will say there are parts of him that are absolutely endearing. And one of the things that I think is really cool about Sang-woo's character is he will not take something just because someone is taller, older, more in power than he is. He will sit there and go, I don't think this is right, which is kind of the basis and premise of the whole reason that his conflict with Jae Young started, because Sang-woo sat there and went when Jae-young meets him for the second time and is trying to intimidate him by basically being taller and older and a senior and all that, and blaming Sang-woo. He's like, you should apologize because I'm not graduated. It's your fault. And he's like, I want to correct an error in your discussion here because this is not my fault that you are not graduating from college. You are the one who was not helping with the project at all, and therefore this is because you did not complete your course and got a fail. This is not because I did anything wrong. So if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for your own error. And I think that's kind of how Sang-woo looks at life, because there's a scene later on in the movie where Jae-young says, you know, you don't seem like someone who would even like games. And Sang-woo's like, I like games. Games are good because you are judged by your merit and your prowess in the game. It has nothing to do with your looks, where you come from. Everyone starts at square one in the game. It's very fair and equitable. And so that's kind of Sang-woo in a nutshell. Is he's very fair and honest, but almost to the point that it is a hindrance because he has no leeway at all in his life. But anyway, Jae-young, Sang-woo have this little kind of impasse. Then Jae-young decides to spend 3 days just driving Sang-woo up a creek. And I love that moment, not the driving Sang-woo nuts, because Jae-young really was absolutely horrid. It's like, there's very few things that really upset me, but when I see someone behaving like Jae-young was behaving with Sang-woo, I'm like, there's something that rises up in me, and I really just want to go over and give them what for. I hardly ever have that happen because I hate confrontation, so it's like it really takes a lot to tick Onna off. But if I see someone is being treated unfairly and in such an open and really, really extreme way, I would probably go to somebody in charge and say, I think this is wrong and we should do X about it. Because fairness matters. There's too much Sang-woo in me, maybe. But anyway, I'm like, those 3 days where Jae-young is literally driving Sang-woo up a creek are really hard for me to watch because he like dresses in red. He takes all the coffee that Sang-woo likes out of the coffee makers or dispenser. He tries to sit down with Sang-woo at lunch and disturb his lunch. He also moves in next door to drive Sang-woo nuts by moving next door. I mean, you think about it, Jae-young's tried it to drive Sang-woo up a creek, but at the end of the day, Sang-woo does not react, which makes Jae-young try harder, which I think is kind of, Sang-woo looks at it as like, what can we do to get rid of this annoyance? He's like, the best way to get rid of this annoyance is to ignore it to the nth degree, and then the annoyance will realize, like a game, that it has no effect, and ergo, the annoyance will leave like a bug. The thing Sang-woo does not calculate is that sometimes the bugs will continue to pester because they have no limits. So he has this whole time where he's like trying to figure out how to navigate dealing with Jae-young without retaliation. Like he gets up really early in the morning to get his favorite spot by the window. He buys a box of coffee so that he does not have to rely on the dispenser. So he's like, I have solved my coffee problem. I have solved my window problem. He creates a little wall between him and Jae-young because Jae-young's sitting next to him and he doesn't want to have to deal with that. So he does all these things to kind of avoid Jae-young. Now, this kind of dissipates after a while. The main reason is there is kind of a mutual putting down of the arms, as it were, between the two of them, because it's not like Sang-woo has arms, but he's like, protective mode, I hate this person, they drive me nuts, kind of thing, and Jae-young just keeps keeping at it. But anyway, there's a moment where Sang-woo decides to go to dinner with this game designer, with these other students, and the game designer company manager or head of the company is a really terrible man, and he gets drunk, and Sang-woo gets very uncomfortable, and he decides to leave and go somewhere else, to go back home. And the game designer manager, owner, whatever, says, you need to finish your drink and you need to agree to be on this project. And Sang-woo is like, when we discuss copyrights and I know that that's taken care of, then I will consider your offer, and I'm not staying and drinking the rest of this drink because I don't want to. And that makes the manager get very aggressive and start to lunge at Sang-woo, which Jae-young is sitting there in the corner and he throws a dart at the game designer's menu book, which he's about to throw into Sang-woo's head. Now, right before this, we had a moment where Sang-woo kind of had a meltdown. Now, his meltdown was throwing a wad of paper at Jae-young because Jae-young had covered up an ad with this red thing that says, you don't need a game designer, this is taken. And Sang-woo got really agitated. He's like, you know what? I know that you're small. I know that you're rude. I know you have basically no behavioral skills, even though you are older and supposed to be mature. I get that, but this is really beyond your abilities for being like a total ingrate, which that really made Jae-young kind of sit there and go, oh, I behaved badly. Sadly, to the point that someone is telling me I really suck. No one's really done that before, apparently. And Jae-young's like, oh no. I really don't understand why in these kind of rom-com type movies people love people because they tell them how sucky they are. I'm like, I don't know why that would be attractive. I'm like, maybe just don't be a sucky person who needs to be told off by someone and get to the point that it's really to that level of terribleness. But anyway, so he keeps Sang-woo from being hit by this manager who has already thrown a glass of alcohol all over Sang-woo. And he grabs Sang-woo by the arm and goes, Kaja, let's go. He's like, we need to run, dude. So they run back home to their apartments. And it's at that point that Jae-young realizes he left his bag with his apartment keys, etc. at the bar. And he's like, can I come into your place? Because my phone was in there and I've got to message people on a computer to let them know they need to grab my bag. And Sang-woo's like, I thought you just said you weren't worried at all to go back to that bar. And he's like, well, I would rather just message people on your computer. And Sang-woo is like, I don't let people into my house. And he's like, I just saved you from the guy who threw alcohol on you and was going to hit you with the menu. And Sang-woo was like, you don't understand. I don't let people into my house. And he shuts the door. And Jae-young's like, he really isn't going to let me into the house. I'm like, I really do get Sang-woo because I'm going, Jae-young, yes, he did something that was very nice at the bar. I will admit that. I'm like, totally. But I'm going, he's still been a total ass for the entire series or movie up to this point. So I'm like, one good deed does not mean you let a total ass into your house. I'm like, I really do get Sang-woo on this. But anyway, Sang-woo says you have 10 minutes. He opens the door back up. He's like, you have 10 minutes to use the computer to message your friends. After that, you are out. And he's like, okay. And so he comes in and he looks at Sang-woo's house, and everything is in organized boxes on shelves. The sofa, everything is like pristine. And Jae-young's like, yep, this is your apartment. And he moves a pin. And Sang-woo goes, you have 8 minutes now, so you better make time. And Jae-young's like, okay, I'll message my friends. Why don't you go take a shower because you smell like alcohol? So Sang-woo goes and takes a rinse off, and he comes out and he's drying off his hair, which Sang-woo is always wearing this baseball cap, which I think that's why he kind of had a meltdown with Jae-young the day before, because Jae-young was like, take off your baseball cap and I will quit bothering you. And Sang-woo was like, this is absolutely insane. I'm not putting up with this behavior. And so then he had his meltdown. But anyway, he comes out and he's got his hair all wet and he's trying to towel it off. And Jae-young looks up and he goes, oh, Sang-woo's kind of cute when he's not wearing a baseball cap and looking at me like he hates me. So he's just sitting there going, you look nice without a baseball cap and you should maybe do that more often. And Sang-woo's like, that's really irrelevant. He's like, have you messaged people? He's like, yes. And there was a point in the messaging to people where he's like, do not hack my computer. He's like, I'm not a hacker. And then he gets on to message his friends on his social media SMS and he's going, I can't remember my password. Locked out after 4 attempts. Sang-woo, do you know how to hack? But anyway, his friend comes with his bag and gets him into the other apartment. At that point, they become less unliking of each other. There is also Jae-hee, this girl who keeps trying to hit on Sang-woo. I'm not really quite sure why she's trying to hit on Sang-woo. Sang-woo is not attracted to Jae-hee in any way, shape, or form, and really just kind of could care less about her existence. No offense to Jae-hee, but she just keeps trying to flirt with him, trying to, whatever. And Jae-young comes up during this time when they're having Jae-hee's trying to talk with Sang-woo, and he says, my computer is broken, you must fix it. And so instead of having a coffee date or mini date with Sang-woo and Jae-hee, it's Sang-woo and Jae-young, and he's trying to fix Jae-young's computer. And there was this scene where Jae-young is kind of waving at Jae-hee like, I've won, goodbye. And she's like, humph, and walks off. But anyway, so you have all that situation where they're at least talking now, but they have some more misunderstandings. And also, I think the main thing with Cho Sang-woo is he doesn't know how to express his emotions. We really don't know where Sang-woo comes from. We don't have his backstory. I'm kind of curious. I wish we would have more of that. I know there was a webtoon that this is based off of, which might have better explanation, because I'm going, people don't become as much like Sang-woo unless there's usually something happens that they feel that showing emotions of any sort will upset the apple cart, so they just pack them down. I'm like, it doesn't happen by nature typically. So, but Cho Sang-woo discovers in the middle of, he had a theatrical presentation with Sang-woo, and Sang-woo had a theatrical presentation with Jae-young where they do this French class melodrama for their professor about how these two people care about one another, then realize they're brothers, which the professor's going, oh, this is so dramatic. And I'm sitting there going, I don't understand melodramas. I never have. I probably never will. And yeah. So anyway, they do this really weird melodrama where they're wearing these white powdered wigs and really frilly outfits that are just ridiculous. I understand that it's period, but still they were ridiculous. Even in period, I'm like, what kind of people walked around in those outfits, even when they were in vogue? But anyway, I'm like, okay, teach their own. But they do the melodrama. Well, as they're putting the costumes back, because Jae-young stole the costumes from the melodrama department, he didn't rent them. I'm like, oh, that's so Jae-young. But anyway, there's this moment where Jae-young and Sang-woo are sitting there crouching in the theater, and it's then that Sang-woo realizes, he's like, I like this person. I shouldn't like this person. This is really freaking me out. My heart is pounding. I'm having reactions. I don't know how to deal with this. And he literally runs and goes to the restroom and just locks himself up. He does not come to school the next day. Even when he had a broken arm, he came to school. But he's at home trying to research, how do I what causes basically bodily reactions to liking people, like flush face, racing heart, all these things, and ruminated material that can make you realize that you like someone. He's like, maybe there's something wrong with me. And he's sitting there by himself, and he goes, if I could just reprogram my brain, reset it so it doesn't do this. So he's having a meltdown because he does not understand why he is feeling this way toward Jae-young. Now, I think it's interesting because even though this is Korea, which is extremely homophobic in general, and I'm not being prejudiced here, it's really quite bad there from what I understand. And also I follow a little bit, I haven't watched a lot of their shows, but Doksu, the YouTube channel as well, has said that it's very bad, and some of the other things I've read online relating to Korean BLs, very bad prejudice against homosexuals in Korea. So there's nothing about that in this drama, which I find interesting, because Cho Sang-woo is not upset that he likes Jae-young because Jae-young is a guy. He is upset because he is troubled that he likes anyone, because liking someone and love is just a biological function, in his opinion, that is not useful for him in his life. So he cannot figure out why he is feeling this way, but not because of homophobia, just because he feels he should be a robot and not have any emotions, and then life would be better, which I will be honest, there have been moments that I have thought the exact same thing, although not relating to romantic endeavors, just in general. It's like, it would be so much easier sometimes if we were robots, but it would not be as fun for the most part. Yeah. So anyway, but he is trying to deal with that. Jae-young comes to his apartment with food to check on him. Sang-woo does not want to open the door, but Jae-young says, if you don't open the door, I'm going to call the police. He comes to the door, lambasts Jae-young to high heaven. Jae-young is sitting there going, why are you mad at me? Why are you telling me you hate my guts? I thought we were getting along. And Choi Sung-woo just completely says some really hurtful things and shuts Jae-young out. Now, I will say Jae-young's reaction to that is completely human, and he's angry, he gets mad, he leaves his apartment, he quits the classes that he was in with Cho Sang-woo, he just completely backs off. But I think that the sad thing about that is I'm going, Jae-young's kind of stupid. I don't mean that bad at all to Jae-young. I know that he's a talented game programmer in the drama, and I know that he is older than Cho Sang-woo, and he's not like bad at school when he applies himself, but he is stupid when it comes to people and relationships, because if he really thought about it with Cho Sang-woo, I'm going, if someone like Cho Sang-woo had a complete meltdown and it was with me, I would sit there and go, this isn't probably about me. This is probably about something that is really bothering them, and they are freaked out and trying to blockade themselves because that has troubled them, whatever that is. Now, there might be a point where someone might hear this and I would go, oh, okay, I guess they really don't like me for whatever reason. But I would sit there with something this pronounced from someone like Sang-woo and go, what is causing them to behave in this way? Now, I might not stick around and talk to someone like Sang-woo when they're in this kind of mood, but I would sit there and go, I wonder what caused that. And maybe they need space and time to figure out their life, but that doesn't mean I would sit there and just bark back at them like Jae-young does. I would sit there and go, what the hell is happening? But probably not to them, because that would only make the thing escalate, and I hate escalations. But I'm going, as a viewer, I'm sitting there going, Jae-young should have asked questions and not been so angry back at Sang-woo, because Sang-woo is on overload and trying to deal with it. It's like, I was reading on Curio recently, and somebody had posted a question that was like, what do you do when people say they need more space but you need to resolve a conflict? And I'm going, well, if people say they need more space, they probably are on absolute overload and they can't process what's going on. So you trying to resolve whatever conflict you had that caused them to say they need space is probably not going to happen until they feel safe around the situation and around the person. And then maybe you can resolve your conflict. Because I'm like, I remember when I was a kid, I'm going, sometimes I really did need space. It wasn't that I had done anything wrong. It had not that someone else had done anything wrong. It's just sometimes you need space to process things, and trying to, I grew up in a family with people that like to just immediately fix things. And I'm like, that never worked. I'm not trying to be bad to my family that I had as a kid growing up. I'm simply saying, it never worked to resolve things quickly, which is one of the reasons I sat there as a kid and was like, this is not going to happen overnight. People need space to process. They need space to feel like they are safe in this situation with this person, which if someone says they need space, like with Sang-woo, I'm going, I don't think it's so much that the barking was the problem. I think the problem is that Sang-woo has no idea how to process what he's going through as a person because he's never felt this way about anyone before. And Jae-young does not realize that trying to come and immediately be a balm in this situation is not going to work with someone like Sang-woo who needs time to process. And then once he trusts Jae-young, he could then let that situation be more peaceful and less combative. But I'm like, it's not going to happen overnight, and that's why people bark and bite, and it doesn't necessarily mean anyone's bad or done something terrible. But anyway, I'm like, yeah, okay, that was a little bit of a diatribe, but yes. So Sang-woo has a meltdown, Jae-young gets mad, Sang-woo is mad, and they quit being friends. And at the end of the day, Sang-woo realizes when Jae-young is out of his life that even though life is back to normal, everything is where it needs to be. He has the seat that he likes, third row down from by the window. He has his coffee every morning in the dispenser. It feels empty. It feels vacant. And he's like, why does it feel this way? Well, then he's talking with Jae-hee, who is there, and he's like, I don't understand. I removed the air from my situation, and I'm still feeling empty and vacant, and like things don't make sense. And Jae-hee says, well, maybe it wasn't about removing the air. Maybe it's about you need a complete restart with that air to figure out how things work. And he's like, oh. You mean it's not by removing the problems that we that we come to a solution? She's like, no, maybe it's about dealing with life with the thing that we consider a problem to find our solution. So he goes to Jae-young and he says, Hyung, I really would like you to consider doing the game design with me. I don't want anyone else to help me with it, only you can help me with the game. And I love that scene because Sang-woo was told by Jae-young that he needed to call him Hyung, which means older brother. And so he comes to a restaurant that is way out of the way for Sang-woo to go to, and he goes with Jae-hee, who thinks they're on a date, but they're not. And he's like, Hyung, I really would like you to please consider this. And I love that scene because he's in the alley with Jae-young, and Jae-young is talking on the phone to someone, and he's like, Hyung, can you please put up your phone? I would like to talk with you. And Jae-young is sitting there going, why are you calling me Hyung? He's like totally angry at Sang-woo and mad and just and Sang-woo leaves a folder with all the game information in it for Veggie Man, the game. And Jae-young does not want to look at it, but he's flipping through after his work, and he finds this Veggie Man picture that he drew when he first met Sang-woo when they were discussing the game, and they were he was being a jerk to Sang-woo and threatening him. And he's like, why does Sang-woo have this picture? So he still says no, and he's being very standoffish, and Sang-woo decides to get the Powers of Persuasion book from the library, and he's sitting there at the campus on a picnic, sitting at a picnic table with this literally like 600-page book, and he's like, I can't read through all of this to figure out how to persuade Jae-young to do X. And Jae-young comes up at that point, and he's like, that's not going to help you persuade me, Sang-woo. And Sang-woo is like, I really don't know how to handle the situation. And in the end, Jae-young says, you know what, I'll do the game, but we will completely revise it. We're going to do this completely differently than we've done before, that you had originally, and there we go. And Sang-woo is like, okay, but I will develop a schedule. We will be able to get it done on time. Well, they have their first deadline, and Sang-woo calls and finds out that Jae-young is playing pool instead of working on the game and having things done by midnight like he said he would. But the next morning, he has everything designed like it was supposed to, and Sang-woo is like, well, you did a good job, even though you didn't stick to the deadline. And Jae-young's like, wow, you actually complimented me. Well, they continue to work on the game. Sang-woo decides when Jae-young has done something that is particularly magnificent to give him a pat on the head, which is like saying the biggest kudos you could possibly get. Also, he tells Jae-young that he cannot touch him, shake his hand, anything without his permission and warning. And Jae-young's like, why can't I, pat your shoulder or say hi or shake your hand without warning? He's like, I don't want to talk about it, but you can't do that. And he's like, okay, this is weird. Well, anyway, they're working on the game, they're getting along, etc. Then one day, they're working on the game. Jae-young is very tired. He goes to go conk out on the sofa, and he asks Sang-woo to wake him up in 10 minutes. Sang-woo goes over to the sofa and decides to kiss Jae-young, and he thinks Jae-young is asleep. He is not. And that night, Jae-young takes him to the bar that his friends owns, and they have soju and some drinks, etc. And Sang-woo has a little too much to drink. Well, as they're sitting there, Jae-young goes, You didn't do anything weird to me when I was sleeping, did you, Sang-woo? And Sang-woo starts coughing up soju, which I would imagine would be very unpleasant coming back up through your nose and throat. But anyway, he's coughing up soju, and he's drinks some more soju, which he should not be doing because he is really, really drunk. And he's like, Jae-young, you are annoying. It is good you are good looking. And Jae-young's like, oh, I am good looking, huh? And he's like, yes, you are very good looking. It's annoying though. And he's like, really? I am good looking. And he's like, okay, I will count to 3. If you don't move, I'm going to assume it's okay to kiss you. So they have this very passionate kiss, which actually Sang-woo starts. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I guess he didn't want to wait 3 seconds. But then Sang-woo panics and he says, I'm sorry. I'm drunk. You're drunk. This is a bad decision. This is not good. I'm sorry. I take full responsibility for the first issue this afternoon when I kissed you then. But this time I think we both need to take some of the blame because we're both drunk. And Jae-young is like, no, this isn't a blame thing, Sang-woo. This isn't like you did something wrong, I did something wrong, and yes, we had soju, but this isn't something we're going to blame on being drunk. It's not like it's a crime what we're doing. Even if we decided to date steadily, it wouldn't be a bad thing. And it's at that point that Sang-woo literally bolts and runs out of the building and down the road. Well, Jae-young follows him and catches him. He pins him against the wall and he's going, you're going to sit here while I breathe and think for a moment, and then we will handle the situation. And he then looks at Sang-woo and he goes, Sang-woo, you always find the base of an issue when you're dealing with something, but this you're running away from, which is not like you. So he's like, why don't you think about this as a prototype experience where you check and see if something's worth subscribing to? And he's going, this is not a subscription service thing, Jae-young. And Jae-young's like, does your heart pound when you're next to me? Do you feel any emotional attachment when you're around me? He's going, if my heart didn't beat when I'm next to you, I would be dead. And Jae-young's like, Sang-woo, can you please not be so literal about everything? And let's think about this as, you're not going to tell me no or yes right now. You're just going to give it time to think about this. But I do want your answer within a certain amount of time. So Sang-woo thinks about it. Jae-young knows he's considering the situation. And Sang-woo also talks to Jae-young's friend, who is this very interesting girl who, I don't know how I feel about her. There's parts of her that I find annoying, but there's parts of her that I do like. But she's talking with Sang-woo and he's like, I really would like to know about Jae-young's previous relationships and how they worked and how the situations ended with people. And the friend is like, he's had about 7 relationships since I've known him in college. They have all primarily been with older people. They all ended somewhat negatively, and Sang was like, well, why did they end negatively? And she's going, well, it's because Jae-young never really takes anything seriously, and that doesn't work well when you're in a relationship with people. She said, but the thing I will say is he does seem to be taking you seriously and actually listening to what you say. And he actually cleaned up basically the studio, which is quite massive for him. So I would say people can change and turn new leaves. So the previous situations, even though they are in the past and they were history, do not necessarily determine the future situations, Sangwoo. Does that answer your question? And he's like, yes, that answers my question. So Sangwoo percolates for about another day, and he's getting ready to tell Jae-young that he has thought about this and the prototype version, and he's decided they will try the subscription. But I really like there's one scene though when he's talking with Jae-young, and he's like, what would the subscription trial period include? And what would be expected? And Jae-young was like, well, we would be able to hug, and we've already kissed, and I would be able to give you a hug. And he grabs Sangwoo and he pats him, and Sangwoo was like, oh, I like this. This is okay. And he's like, okay, you've had your trial here. Now what do you think? He's like, I need time to process. But anyway, Sangwoo decides he's going to trial date Jae-young, which I say is massive for Sangwoo. I mean, this is one part in the movie or series when I sit there and go, for Sangwoo to actually think about agreeing to date anyone is like a massive endeavor for him. So anyway, he's getting ready to say he's going to date this person, but then he walks in and finds out that Jae-young just got offered a internship at a French gaming company, which is like his dream job. And so he tells Jae-young that he had something to say before he finds out about the French gaming job, and he's like, oh, it's nothing, I don't have anything I need to say. Well, the next day, Jae-young's like, I really would like to have known what he was thinking and what he was going to say. But the next day, Sangwoo was like, we can't have a trial period, it wouldn't work. You need to go to France, I'll find a new game designer, just send me the hard drive. And so Jae-young gets the hard drive ready, he gets his stuff packed up, and Sangwoo is trying to figure out how to distance himself from Jae-young. Now, I think, again, Jae-young really could use some personal growth, because if he would just have not lost it when Sangwoo kind of like had a meltdown, and if he hadn't have just said, oh, okay, when Sangwoo said, I don't want to date you, because if he really thought about it, he would know that the reason that Sangwoo was saying that is because he found out that he's getting ready to go to this French gaming company, and he doesn't want to hinder that. But anyway, the night, like 2 nights later, I don't know, I'm not sure on the timetable here for the show, but anyway, the Sangwoo decides that he really should reconsider this, because he meets with Jae-hee, who tells him, I really like you, but I know that you don't like me, but I want to say this so I don't have any regrets. And she said, I would love to say that I'm happy that you found someone else. She said, but I'm too jealous for that. And I'm going, Jae-hee is honest, but still not a likable character. I'm like, really? It's one of those nasty women in BL things again. I really wish we didn't have that so much. But anyway, but during the time when she's talking with Sangwoo, she says, I found that you've become a better person, and I really think it's because of the person who you're around more. Because she had a conversation with Jae-young, because Jae-young said, I am going to pursue Sangwoo, and you can keep trying, but I'm just letting you know I don't lose easily, and I'm not losing to you, Jae-hee. And she was very upset by this conversation she had previously, but she thinks that Sangwoo and Jae-young are together, which they're not at this point. But this gets Sangwoo to thinking, and he ends up getting on his bicycle and riding to try to find Jae-young. He finds Jae-young, and he's like, why do you not pick up your phone? You are like an error. You just keep popping up and doing things that drive me nuts. And he's like, and Jae-young's like, you came all the way here in the middle of the night to tell me that I'm an error and that I just drive you nuts. And Sangwoo's like, Yes, but I really, really like you, and I don't want you to have to go to France, but I also don't want to keep you from this situation. But is there any way that I could basically retrench my opinions on not dating you? And Jan's like, nope, nope, I'm sorry, but that trial offer is off because we have passed that time, but I will make a new offer. He's like, let's not do a trial, Sangwoo. Let's just date. Are you good with that, basically? And Sangwoo comes up and gives him a hug. And Jae-young's like, oh, thank goodness, I was so nervous. And Sangwoo's like, what? And then he finds out that Jae-young has been talking with a French gaming company to have them take the Veggie Man game and make it part of their group. And he wasn't ever planning on letting Sangwoo find another game designer. And so at the end scene, there's this very funny part where um, Sang-woo is talking with Jae-young, and he's like, but what if this costs you working with this French gaming company? And Jae-young's like, they're not the best company in the world, Sang-woo. I am very talented. I could go even work for a better company. Your boyfriend is basically very, very awesome and magnificent when it comes to being a gaming producer or designer. And Sang-woo's like, oh, my boyfriend. And he just taps his head very happily. And Jagan's like, oh, you like that name, don't you? And he's like, I do. But anyway, that is how the series ends. Now, if you watch past the end credits, there's a very cute scene where they apparently have been working on the game. Jae-young has been to France and come back, and they're working on Sang-woo's PowerPoint because Sang-woo cannot make a PowerPoint still to save his life and put this big blue character in the PowerPoint because he thought it would encourage people to be more trusting because he read somewhere that blue is a good color for that. And Jae-young's like, you know nothing about PowerPoints, but you don't change, which is one reason I really like you, Sang-woo. And Sang-woo's like, oh, you do. And I love how Sang-woo kind of gets this like little kind of dazed in the headlight look, and he's like, oh, I like Jae-young. And Jae-young's like, don't look at me like that. I will not get this PowerPoint done tonight. He's like, oh, okay, I will not. I'm going to go run and do something, and I'll be back. And so he leaves Jae-young with the computer and the PowerPoint, and Jae-young's like, maybe we have another template we can use because this is really horrid. So he's looking for templates on Sang-woo's computer, and instead he finds this folder that's basically called Jae-young, and it has these little semi-folders in it of like Jae-young standing on a skateboard, Jae-young doing this, because he went through all of Jae-young's social accounts and got like all these pictures of Jae-young so he can pull them up and look at them. And Jae-young's like, my boyfriend is so weird. And Sung-woo comes in and goes, don't look at my pictures. And he's like, it's too late. I've seen all these pictures. And he's like, you're so funny. But anyway, I would give this series an absolute 10 out of 10. It is one of the few Korean BL series that is actually, no offense, but an honest opinion, worth watching because some are just really weird. So you can watch it on Viki Rakuten. It also is based off of a webtoon by Geo Suri, I believe. I have not read the webtoon, and I've not been very impressed with any of the webtoonies that I've tried to read that were movies have been based off of their BL. I'm not saying there aren't some good ones. I'm just saying I've seen some really not very nice ones. So I'm like, I just really don't spend my time on that. But it is based off of a webtoon. I would say that for me, I think Semantic Error, To My Star, and Color Rush are the best Korean BLs I've seen. I'm not saying there aren't others that are very good. There are some which I'm hoping to take time to watch here in the next few months, but haven't gotten that done yet. I have also not watched Color Rush 2 or I watched the end of To My Star 2, so I did see that, but I kind of skipped around because I find the sequel was a little kind of slow moving and not as good as the first one. No offense, I thought the actors did a great job. The storyline was just not as good. But anyway, so you can watch this on Viki Rakuten. The subtitles are pretty accurate, and I would recommend watching the movie over the the series, as that way you don't have to have all the little credits between them. So it's kind of nice, and you can finish it in under 3 hours. So it's not very long, but it's a very nice show, and you can watch this with any age group. There is nothing in it that is not appropriate. You don't have to skip. I mean, it's really not anything like that. So I would give it an absolute 10 out of 10. Check it at the round table. Bye.